the way that you just get up and you live your life, and the way that you can just do that on a, it feels like a drop of a dime, is so inspiring, especially in a world that you just don't see that ever.
I think we're
You know
just
what I
all
mean?
just trying to figure it out. I think all together we make one really well-adjusted person. Like individually we'd be sunk, but together, this
Mm-hmm.
worldwide family of friends that you and I are part of, and to say both new and old friends, and just assume friendship and
Mm-hmm.
assume, that being wise. I mean, like as a recovering trial lawyer for 30 years, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've got stuff, but I just keep more things in my thought bubble
Mm-hmm.
than perhaps other people do. So,
What do you mean? What do you mean by assumed friendship? And I'm asking that because, so I'm originally from California. I'm from LA,
oh,
and
no.
I grew up in the inner city. So I was born in Inglewood, all up and down South Central. And to me, growing up, you didn't assume friendship. You assumed to watch yourself,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
don't trust people. So I'm wondering if that's, when you say assumed friendship, is it literally the polar opposite of that? Like you assume that
Yeah.
everybody is your friend.
Yeah, like I just assume that there, a couple things. The first thing that is such a great reminder to me is that I assume, like my factory settings are that life and God and everything is perceived by you the same way it is perceived by me. That your
Mm,
lived experience, while I'm aware, it would certainly be different. I just assume whatever's going on in your life would be something similar to what's going on in my life, and that's wrong. Like, but I make that assumption, then I need to like step back from that and to say, tomorrow there's going to be a bride and she's going to be praying for sunshine, and there's going to be a
mm-hmm,
farmer and he's going to be praying for rain. And so if it
mm-hmm,
rains on her big day, it doesn't mean like God's mad at her. He's just doing something different in her life than he's doing in the farmer's life. And so that's, I think, just a great thing. While I assume friendship, I don't, I need to pull myself back from assuming, and I think we all just naturally do that, that your
mm-hmm,
worldview would be my worldview. And then to just be second, number two, just super curious to say,
mm-hmm,
I want to know what your worldview is because I want to understand it. I'm not grading it like the Olympics. I just
mm-hmm.
want to know, what can I learn? How can I be more student, less professor? Because I'm not a very good professor, but I am a pretty good person about being curious about other people and to say, like, wow, how has that shaped your worldview so that I could have a more accurate one myself?
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I know we hop straight into it. Let me just take a pause and say thank you so much for being here. Like I genuinely, like, you have changed my life. I remember I read Love Does 7 years ago is when I read it, and I was going through a really hard time transitioning from football to being a dad, and
Wow.
living in a place like California in the inner city, then moving to a place like Minneapolis where the culture was completely different. And I
Yeah.
remember not really, I remember realizing that we all have the same like Webster's dictionary word, right? Like love or kindness or fear, but everybody has their own definition. And I think when I read Love Does, I really understood what love really meant. And I also, and for me, I also realized how difficult it was to acquire. Like that's my experience
Man,
based
I'm right there
based
with
on
you. Yeah.
okay, based on like especially how I was raised and how I was viewed, to view love in my family dynamic, but also even in the sport that I played, because you received love from your coaches based on performance, based on accolades, and based on
Yeah.
things like that. And when I read your book, and I've been following you ever since, the way you move around life with this whim, being whimsical and just being loving, and almost like a, this is the only term that I have, and I hope it isn't bad, but almost like you don't care. Like everything is okay. You know what I mean? And when I think about that, I'm always wondering how, and I know your belief in Jesus and God. And for me, I'm a very like, with my athletic background, I'm a very like technical. Okay, in order to get better at this, I have to do that and have the
Yeah.
routine for
What are
this
the
and the structure for
mechanics?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
were you always like this?
Yeah, I would say, tell me what your experiences with this proposition that were either a reflection of or reaction to the people who are closest to us. So
Mm-hmm.
think about just go scroll through, do a little audit yourself to
Mm-hmm.
say, are you
Mm-hmm.
more reflection of, and then who are you a reaction to? And all of us are a little mixed bag of everything, but I would be a reaction to the way I was raised. So my
Mm-hmm.
parents super buttoned down, super conservative, super everything, and then didn't have the access to words that might be more familiar to you and I about love and hugs and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't make me either a hero or a victim of the story. But at
Mm-hmm.
some point, I decided I was going to be a participant, and so the things that I lacked that were on my wish list growing up, like affection, words of encouragement, all those, that I just decided I'm going to be that guy, which is a pretty unlikely outcome for a 30-year trial lawyer. Most people are thinking like danger close. Um, but instead of trying to be like somebody else or play a role, I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to go be me. And while faith matters to me a lot, I'm not um, like adopting other people's language and other
Mm-hmm.
people's experience. I'll just appreciate those and say, like, wow, I wonder how that works out for
Mm-hmm.
you. And then maybe that change internally and answer your question. When people had asked me, like, how's life working out for me? I think I started twisting that and saying, like, how does it work? How's my life working out for the people around me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how's my life working out for sweet Maria Goff, my wife? How's it working out for our three kids? How's it working out for the mail carrier? How's it working out? And not just for the nicest person in the block, but the most
Mm-hmm.
difficult person in my neighborhood. Like, how's it
Mm-hmm.
working? How's my life working out for them? And that has started to continue to change me,
Mm-hmm.
and to just say, like, wow, they're on this adventure. I don't have it quite dialed in, and I see the same people you see on the news. I just go like, wow, I wonder what is going on in
Mm-hmm.
here that would relate to that. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of being, I have a lot of resolve, as I'm sure you do too,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not getting up in everybody's grill. I just like, for me, I just resolve to do more stuff, not form more opinions. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
No,
Because
that does make sense. I'm wondering, so when you decided to be like, when you looked around and say, okay, I am a reflection of the things that are around me, and I want to be myself. What did that journey look like? Because I think a lot of times people hear someone like you speak or me speak when I speak with my friends, and they ask me how I am the way that I am now, and they'll ask me like, how did you become like this? And I think in the beginning, when I first started to change, I would say like, oh, you got to just make the decision. And although that's true, just because you make the decision doesn't mean you have the tools and the
yeah,
resources or the skills
implementing
to
the
do so.
decision.
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
what
go.
did that look like?
I've decided. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the thing that I'm constantly thinking about is not just intellectually, like what do I agree or disagree with, but what am
Mm-hmm.
I going to do about it? And
Mm-hmm.
so this very much like think it, do it. That's very much at the heartbeat. I wrote to the Pope. It's not the first time I've written to the Pope. I've written to him 20 times and say, hey, can we meet? I don't want a selfie with him, but he's, the leader of a lot of people. So I bet in about a week, I'll hear back the same letter I get every time, which is no. So, and I'm not bummed about that. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to keep trying to do it. It's not like on my bucket list or something, but I want to take people who are influencing a lot of people. Take the
Mm-hmm.
president of Somalia. That country's had so much upheaval, and they're actually their former president living in exile just out of Minneapolis, outside.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I tracked him down, and I made a Love Does award. And his name's pretty short, but his wife's name could wrap around it three times. So I found him, and he's living like kind of like out of the public eye. And I'm like, you need to hide better because I found you in like 1 minute. So, but to honor people who've done courageous things. like as he's
Mm-hmm.
leading a country in so much disruption, so much that he had to flee the country. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to like continue to be active and then not do it just across the ocean, but what about doing it across the street? Like to the
Mm-hmm.
person that their dog keeps taking a dump on your lawn, or like just the
Mm-hmm.
really pedestrian kinds of things that are going on. So I think what I want to do is I'm trying to. This isn't self improvement. I'm trying to say how can it be a better and more accurate reflection of all the things that I say I believe to be true about faith and life and all that. And then when I catch myself, which is constantly, then I say I don't beat myself up. I just say, hey, what was the thing underneath the thing? What was
Mm-hmm.
driving that? And it's usually insecurity. How about for you? Like when you do something that's just like, you miss what you're aiming for. I can usually trace that back to little Bobby Goff being insecure.
Mm-hmm. For me, I think I've always been goal driven without ever having a goal because for me, I've always believed in the work that I will put in. And if you put in work, there's outcomes that will be good because you're willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
What I've learned throughout my life is that you don't want to be climbing the wrong ladder just to get to the top to realize like, oh man, I shouldn't be up here. You know what I mean? So putting
Yeah.
the work in the wrong place. I think I'm still trying to find out what it is that I'm doing what I'm doing for. You know, it's easy when you have kids and when you get married because oh, I'm doing it for my kids and for my wife. But as I realized, well, these are decisions that I've made is to get married and to have kids and bring these kids here. There's
Yeah.
still something about me that I have to give to myself for them and for this bigger thing that's around. And I'm still trying to figure out what that is. Now, and I feel like my big thing is I just really care about being intentional because with being intentional means you have to think about what you're doing before you do it. And
Yeah.
you also have to choose the right thing to be intentional towards. You know what I mean? And anytime I try to go back to the little said and what he would have wanted, I never have an answer for that.
Mm,
I'm the oldest of my family, all my siblings. I'm the first one to graduate high school, first one to go to college, first one to go to the NFL, and everything was just about the work. Just do the work. And now, you know, when you play football and you are in school, the work showcases that you got an A, or it showcases that you got a trophy. With my kids and with my wife, there is no mark of measurement when it comes to a tangible award that they can give me. So now I'm always like, what? Not necessarily what am I here for, but what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like what
yeah.
am I doing? And that's a constant struggle for me.
Just so good. How old are your kids?
8, 6, and 3.
Way to make people. Way to go.
Thank you.
Keep going. Like I think I say this phrase to myself all the time, just like that. A hope without a plan is a wish, and so you can
Mm,
be wishing on shooting stars and all that. But I want to say I have a hope, and you do too, in many things. Pick the category for my family, for my friends, for people that are really up against some difficult things in conflict zones. So I have hope, and then to say, what's the plan? What am I going to do about that? And I can't do everything about everything, but I can do something about something. So
mm-hmm,
hope about a plan, it's just a wish. And I'm just, if you take just hoping without putting wheels on it off the table, all you're left with is doing something about it. And
mm-hmm,
you can't do something about everything. So pick a couple things. Like just pick really well and just say, okay, I think I could move the needle in that way. Have you heard this before? It's kind of a leadership concept. Say vision, strategy, tactics, execution. That
yep.
sounds like kind of an NFL kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It is.
Yeah. I'm trying to give me 20. So like the vision, like what do you want to be remembered for? Because I'm going to be in a jar at some point or a snow globe. I haven't decided which one, but with a recording, put me down. Um, so 27,383 days. That's about what you and I get, give or take. Less if
Hmm.
you eat Pop Tarts. So 27,383. And then what do I want to leave behind? And so I write books like Love Does and some others because I want to leave this legacy. I find the work very tedious. I bet you found some of your workouts and
Mm.
drills and all very tedious. But that idea, the vision, longer view of that is that I want to leave something behind for generations. I got a nickel that's older than my great grandfather. I don't know anything about him. And I'm sure he lived, I know where he lived and maybe what he did. But that would be so awful if somebody said, yeah, but I think your great grand, he was like a lawyer or a liar or something, and maybe lived in San Diego. I think we have more, you and I, to leave than that. Not that we're pontificating to everybody, but it's like hope and joy and how you dealt with struggles. Wouldn't you love that if you had a great grandfather, great grandmother that left behind those things for you?
I think so. Like I think I've never had a family heirloom. I've never had anything like that. And I think for me, that's why when I hear you speaking, I'm like, it's fascinating because I believe when you say I want to live a legacy, I hear a really positive, impactful legacy that will impact human beings as they walk their life. But I think it's in today's society, legacy is always correlated with wealth and money and having X amount of things. And for me, I'm wondering how are you able to separate leaving a legacy that impacts people and people still have to do that work? Like if you read Love Does, you're not gonna read that book walking away feeling like, oh, I got the world figured out and I can do it. You have to do the work. Whereas somebody who goes out and they make a bunch of money and the money's sitting there, their family is taken care of and they don't have to like do the work, but they still have other human type things that they have to deal with. So how are you able to separate those things? Say, I want to leave a legacy that
Yeah.
genuinely impacts and leaves an impact for people living a really difficult life as we all
Yeah.
do.
And when it comes to wealth and all that, I have to immediately disqualify myself because I grew up in a castle. Can you believe that? Uh,
Mm,
it was a row house in San Jose, California, but my grandparents told me it was a castle, and I believed them.
mm.
They painted it bright pink with white trim.
Really?
Property values cratered for a mile and
I bet.
they decided they lived in a castle. They told me they had a guy. They were so wealthy they didn't even need to make their own meals. There's a guy named Swanson that
Mm.
delivered their meals on these metal trays every day. And they would let me peel back the cobbler. Did you ever do that
Mm.
in TV dinners and
Yeah,
let
yeah,
it
yeah,
brown on the
yeah,
top?
yeah, yep, yep.
They had more sodium in them than Lot's wife when they died. But they paid me room rent. I got a nickel every time they went into my room at their house in their castle. And I
Mm.
used to run upstairs and get those nickels. I'm 66 years old, and I still remember being 6 years old and running upstairs and feeling my grandparents had nailed it, that they were the wealthiest people, not realizing they were living on 300 a month in Social Security. And
Mm.
so, like, I just like this idea that we get to create that for our kids, and then to live into it, not a make believe world, but just a view of our world and how we can
Mm.
impact it. And again, heavy emphasis on across the street, and maybe lighter emphasis on across the ocean for a guy who does all this stuff across an ocean. So
Mm-hmm.
to realize those things, the push and pull, and
Mm-hmm.
then not to beat ourselves up, but to say, hey, where can I move the needle the most in people's lives? And if the circumstances conspire to have that be Uganda, then well, Uganda it is.
But
Um,
how does someone start with themselves before they jump to Uganda? Like how
well,
can they?
yeah, yeah. I would
Oh, go ahead,
just
go
say
ahead.
like, that idea of you. I would love you and I ought to go write your memoir. Like we had to just decide 10 sentences a day for 100 days. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we've already spoken 300 sentences. Ten
Mm-hmm.
sentences a day for 100 days, you'd be done. So for
Mm-hmm.
part of this is collecting our thoughts. You've learned so much about discipline and
Mm-hmm.
excellence and doing hard things, all that. Man, I want you to pass that on not only to me, but to your kids and your kids' kids and your kids'
Mm-hmm.
kids' kids. So that strategy, so vision, strategy. What are you going to do in the next couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
So between now and jar time, then I'd say like, no, I'm leaving it all on the field.
Mm-hmm. I have. I want to tell you something. I've never. I don't think I've ever said this out loud in my life. But I want to tell you this. I want to be honest about a thought that I've always had, and I'm wondering if you can help me with this. I remember being a kid especially getting into my teenage years, and you start to learn about people who have money and like the difference in like the wealth gap and people like stuff like that. And I started to pay attention to my family, and like I'm like, oh, we didn't really have money. And I lived in a small town called Bombay Beach, California, with my dad the last 3 years in the Imperial Valley, way it's like right by Mexico.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to have these thoughts like, man, I don't want to be the one who works really hard and I can enjoy what I worked hard for. Like, yeah, it's nice that my kids and my kids will be able to live nicely. But what about me? Because I didn't get to do that. Like, and I'm the one that has to do this so everybody else can enjoy it. What about me? I remember going through that for so long. And if I'm being honest with you, it's probably there a little bit now, but now I just put that energy into the work. And I think obviously when I had kids, it changed. It changed a little bit. But I'm wondering if that's something that you ever felt at all, or if you think that's normal thinking for someone who didn't really come from much at all.
Yeah, I was just immediately thinking of deferral, like that idea of deferral. Wherever somebody that's listening is socioeconomically, to say sometimes we just defer things for really honorable reasons, and then sometimes we defer things because we don't want to deal with them. So you
Mm,
defer like something that would feel like a confrontation with somebody, like where it got really wonky, and you're just like, I just want to deal with it. So you kick that can down the road, but then you go
mm,
like, actually, you haven't dealt with anything. And then when you have deferred some kind of like relational maintenance on
mm.
things, then have you ever had when you're out on the road, you're pulling your suitcase and it's got wheels on, and then the handle falls off, and then you have to like
Yeah.
hold the
Yeah.
suitcase
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
you, like
Yeah.
walk to the bus.
Mm,
So that happened to me not too long ago, and I was thinking in my mind because I just think in those metaphors, like it would be like if you've deferred a bunch of relational stuff in your life and not dealt with it to kind of find a shelf for it, and I've deferred a bunch of stuff in my life. Then what we do is we don't have a handle on it, and our luggage meets our luggage. Like I don't meet you,
mm,
and you don't meet me. We meet all the ish we've been carrying around all this time.
mm,
And so what I want to do is kind of get a handle on it, and that's the starting point. Maybe our greatest contribution to these people, it won't be cash, it won't be whatever, it'll be these experiences that are born out of us doing the hard work relationally to
mm,
deal with the social inequalities, to say, what am I going to do about that? Am I just going to keep it up here, or I'm going to think it, do it? Like I'm actually going to
mm,
somebody, there's a law in the Supreme Court passed something about women's rights. And so some people will go protest that, and that's terrific. I want to start a teen mom's home. So, but
mm,
think it and do it. I don't know, 4 days, like, and that's not reflecting on me. It's just the people that are so go for it that want to just like, let's make some stuff happen. Let's get some
mm,
skin in that game,
mm,
and then not with militance, but with resolve to say, let's get more, let's get more, let's get more. Like, how could we do things for military families? How could we think? And for me, that is so energizing.
mm,
It's like finding, I feel like when I'm talking to you, like I found another friend in this big conga line, like a Greek
mm.
wedding. You just grab the shoulders of the person in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
Mhm, yeah.
I think of this brief period of time that we have here is to discover each other and to say, what can I do to be helpful to you? In that
Mhm.
Benedictine tradition, they had a job and it's called being a porter. And I think of a porter as like a Sherpa that carries all your stuff up Everest. But a porter for the Benedictines, get this, it sounds like a lot like you. They go to the gate every morning and they greet people and they say, how can I help you on your way? And I love that.
Mm,
That's what
mm,
good humans do. They're porters. They say, is there anything I can do to help you on your way? Instead of
mhm,
telling people which way they ought to go, to say, what can I do to be just hold your arms up? Kind
mhm,
of like Moses.
mhm,
When his
mhm,
arms were up, he was winning the war. And when his arms were down, he was losing. So, like, I just want to be a professional arm holder. I just want
mhm.
whatever battle you're fighting, if I can hold up your left arm while you're doing it, count me in.
Do you feel like the way that you are is something that you've worked to be, or is this who you are internally? The person that wants to hold people's hands up, do you feel like that's in you, or you have to work to make sure that that is who you are because of how you feel that God wants you to be?
Yeah, I feel like it's a constant. a struggle. Like we have kind of like, I don't know if angels are on each shoulder, but I'm a selfish guy and I see the world through my lens. And I'm trying to continue to say, and this again is a guy, Paul, that wrote to a friend of his, Timothy, who's talking behind his back. And he said, I don't have anybody like him. He's a guy who takes a genuine interest in other people's welfare. So I just
Mm,
like I aspire to that. I don't get there all the time, but I aspire to that. Instead of saying, "Hey, what can I do to improve my day or make my life more comfortable or make my dream come true?" What if I were to continue to say, "Hey, what is it for the different people who I have the honor to work with? Check in with
mm-hmm,
them and say, "Hey, what can I do for you today?" Forget my stuff
mm-hmm,
because you, as a career, help me accomplish my stuff. What can I do for you
mm-hmm,
today? I'll go detail your car, like whatever.
mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
let's figure out. So anyway, and answer your question, that is like that retooling every single day. How can I like flip the script?
So what do you do? I don't even know if you use this term, but I'm going to use this term. You can correct me if it's the wrong term. What do you do when you fail in that
Oh
mission?
gosh, all the time. First thing I do is take note of it. When you're writing your memoir, I'm going to tell you that there's an old writer's trick. You fail in chapter four because chapter one's too early and chapter 30 is too late. So
Mm-hmm.
fail. Somebody asked me if I'd write a marriage book once, and I'm like, oh, I'd call that thing chapter four. And every chapter would be chapter four. So there'd
Mm-hmm.
be book clubs and be like, what chapter are you on? We're like, four. Um, so sometimes we want to, and it isn't a pride thing necessarily, but we want to be, very up and to the right with everything. And we want to
Mm-hmm.
just kind of forget about those things or defer dealing with them. And what I want to do is say, can I just come to understand what was the thing going on there? Like there was usually a return address. If I'm selfish or if I
Yes.
say I don't have time, it's usually I don't have empathy. That's what's
Oh my
really
God.
going on. And
Yes, yes.
so to say, not to beat myself up, because I want you, if you're listening, to like repeat, I'm not a pinata. Like when you hit
Mm-hmm.
yourself, it's not candy that comes out of you, it's other stuff. So what I want to do is to just not beat myself up, but to just say, I get junk mail. I bet you get a lot of junk mail.
Mm-hmm.
I get it by the foot. And what I do is I see upper left-hand corner, do I know that return address? Is that from somebody that I know, or is this junk mail? And I think sometimes we get off track because we're reading the junk mail
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, no, these are trusted voices in my life. And if
Mm-hmm.
whether faith guides your steps or you have some great friends or a little both, but to just say, hey, I really want to find a trusted source to be the return address. Because if you're getting it from what Instagram tells you, then you might not have vetted that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I really
Yeah,
want.
that's a beautiful answer. Like, cause for me, it's exactly that. It's like if I mess up, cause I do this in football. If I messed up, we would like watch the film, see what we did wrong, go to practice and do it again, and keep getting better. And I think
Bingo.
that when you get in, and when you're dealing with like real life, and you're dealing with people's emotions and people's like that's what you're dealing with all the time. We're dealing with people's emotions all the time. And
Yes.
then when something happens to you, if you can take note, and this is where, in my opinion, where curiosity has to lead. Where it's like, oh, I wonder, like, why did they do that, or why do they feel that way?
Bingo.
And when that happens, okay, I take note of it. I'm okay, and I let curiosity lead the way, and that's where you can kind of place, okay, well, I did feel sad, I did feel hurt, and I can still feel that, and that's okay. That can sit up here, and that's okay, and
Bingo.
I can deal with that accordingly instead of being led by reacting instead of being able to respond thoughtfully or carefully or not even responding at all. Because I believe that not responding at all actually is a response to a large degree, depending on the
Bingo.
situation that's going.
Yeah.
So
Well,
hearing you say that, I'm just like, yes, like that's exactly what I've learned in the past year and a half is to like take note, process, get the words, articulate it, let it land, and then that's all that I can do. I can't control the outcome, and that's so
yes.
freeing. But and that's why I was asking so much in the beginning because that takes a lot of work. It takes a
Constantly.
lot of work. Yeah, it really,
Yes,
really
it's
does.
going to take about 27,383 days,
Mm,
plus one. It's just gonna, we're not gonna get it figured out this side of heaven's curtain. But what we
Mm,
can do is be mature enough to know that where we think we're having a disagreement with somebody, we're actually talking to the person that they just had a disagreement with. If
mm,
I was in a sour mood, it's because you thought you were talking to me, but you're actually talking to the person who just bummed me out. And so then I
mm,
show up
mm,
bummed out, but you're not talking to me right now. You're talking to that unresolved whatever. And
mm,
so just be a little bit more filled with grace. I try to keep what we call the LCE around here, least creepiest explanation. So it's easy to come up with the most creepiest explanation if somebody's kind of off-putting.
mm,
I say, what's the least creepiest? So what I try to do is say, what's the most generous explanation for whatever just went down? Like it was kind of wonky. What went down? What's the most realistic explanation for what went down? And then what's the most optimistic? And that's been super helpful.
Ooh, that's really
Generous,
good.
realistic, optimistic. So, an example of that, I spoke at a church, and I'm not big on snakes. Are you like a snake guy? Like you get
No.
afraid of them?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just
I'm big
like,
on snakes.
I can, spiders, anything but snakes is like a no-fly zone. So I spoke at this thing, and 15 minutes after I started, a woman walked down the aisle, and she had a 7-foot boa around her neck. I was just freaking
Okay.
out. But I thought to myself, what's the most generous explanation? And all I could come up with is maybe she doesn't know. So
Mm,
maybe she
hmm.
like walked through the parking lot, wrapped it around her neck, and what's the most realistic explanation? She's probably got some stuff going on. I mean, you do, I do. That's just more extreme version of that.
Yeah.
And then what's the most optimistic explanation is that maybe I won't get bit. So what I'm
Mm,
trying to do is when I approach somebody who's a little prickly, rather than quickly go to that, figure out whether they're safe or not, and then dismiss them if they're not. I'm trying to understand. I'm not getting wrapped around the axle in it, but I want to be a little bit more curious about people. I wonder how
mm,
life fits together. Take the most biased person that you've met, and you go like, "Wow," or the most antagonistic, or people come to mind. I just go, I wonder how they see life. And
hmm,
then what can I do so that I'm not giving off that vibe that
hmm.
they're giving off pretty strong right now? So what do you do? How do you navigate that?
Well, it's so funny you bring that up because I think what to me what's coming up in my mind is it's like you're actively practicing how to gain empathy from someone instead of getting empathy through some kind of reaction that you would have with them. So for me, it's like what I do is I'll rationalize, okay, like why is this person homeless or why is this person doing this thing, and I'm trying to like rationalize, okay, like I feel this for them, so therefore I can like do something about it, or I can have empathy for more people like them. And on the other note, it's like if something happens to someone, like this is a really uh, sensitive thing to bring up now because it just
Yeah.
happened 2 days ago. But with the Minneapolis shooting, I live in Minneapolis. Like I have friends who went
Mhm.
to, I have friends whose kids went there who saw the whole thing. I have friends who's know people who kids who gotten shot, and it's like when I heard about all the shootings before, it hurt me. But when it's closer to me with friends, I get more empathy for it because it's
Yeah.
closer to me.
Yeah. Another connection
So,
point.
yeah, exactly. So now it's like when you pay attention and it gets closer to you, that's one way to gain the empathy. But then when you actively practice what is this person potentially going through? So I can actively be thinking about people before I think about what happened to the person. I
Yes.
feel like that's always what's happening in my brain. And it's hard because when you learn it, when you, from a biblical perspective, it's like, well, am I judging them? Am I like am I saying that they're this way because of whatever? But I think the way that you do it is like, what's the best, what's, how do
Oh
you
yeah,
phrase it
yeah. What's
exactly?
the most generous explanation? What's the most realistic explanation? And what's the most
Mm,
optimistic?
hmm. And
Um,
I think that with that format, I think you give yourself a good opportunity of, okay, like okay, I have this all up here, and now I can kind of choose I almost wonder, are you choosing, or does it help kind of calm you down, and like kind of you can kind of like reason and and rationalize more?
Yeah, I just understand context. I think that's what you and I are
Mm-hmm.
both saying. We understand the
Mm-hmm.
context because you have more connection to tragedy locally, then you understand more the context. You know where that place is located.
Mm-hmm.
You know the families involved. You have just 3D kind of context. Where if you're
Mm-hmm.
hearing something happening in Afghanistan, you can wrap your mind around it. It's Asia somewhere, but it's hard to have context. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the more we can do about that, I've just tried to listen a little bit less to people's opinions and
Mm-hmm.
ask them, "What's your experience?" Because
Mm-hmm.
opinions are like ears; everybody's got a couple of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But to say, "What's your experience?" We've I had as one of the things I wanted to do in college. I wanted to sail across the ocean, and
Mm-hmm.
so there was a guy. I'm fixing to try to do that again. We borrowed a boat in college. I thought, well, I can borrow a boat again. Uh, Total cost nothing. Um, and there's a guy who is telling me, "Oh yeah, to have these sails and take this course and this life raft and all that." And I said, "Oh, are you a sailor?" He said, "No, I've never left Ohio." So he had a ton of opinions, just no experience. And so what I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to do is when people are sharing opinions, to ask, what is your experience? Take the financial, racial reconciliation, poverty, relationships. So tell me your experience, and then you'll understand more context with that. So I
Mm-hmm.
would be more likely to say, "Hey, I don't have any experience with that," than I would to
Mm-hmm.
say, give you an opinion about something.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could say the closest experience I have doesn't seem very close to that, and it's this.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think if we lead with that rather than lead with opinions, then we'll actually leave a door to a conversation. We used to have
Mm-hmm.
more of those.
Mm-hmm.
Just two friends, new or old, having a conversation like we're having. That's really
Mm-hmm.
good stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's making me think about something you said. I've heard you say before, where you say, you know, heaven is real, but love is urgent now. Like that's kind of like what that's something I've always like picked up from you. And I think that given what we just talked about now, and knowing that like the human experience is really really complicated, and I think with the human experience, we're always trying to get we're focused on like getting to heaven because there is no suffering. And I believe that we always will suffer here on earth to some degree, and some more than others. And I think depending on how you look at suffering, like that determines like how much you're suffering or not suffering. It's all subjective, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And when I think about love is urgent now and how difficult it is to like love others without loving yourself and understanding where love comes from, how is that something that we obtain now? Is knowing that how we can love now, and we can, and it needs to urgently happen, and that heaven will happen later.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. When people ask me about, there was somebody called not long ago, and they said, I read one of your books, and I don't think you have enough Bible verses in it. And I said, oh, you need to read a little bit more closely because I don't have any Bible verses in it. I'm writing for the guy at the tire store. I want the
Mm-hmm.
person who wouldn't self-describe this way, but would feel like church adjacent. They're not like mad. They've just been wounded, like everybody's been beat up a little bit. But I just want to know you're welcome. And so, in answer to your question, there's one of the things Jesus said. He said, I was hungry and you fed me, and I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger. I was kind of creepy and you invited me in. I was sick and he comforted me. I was naked and he clothed me. I was in jail and he came. So that's it. I've just given you the entire game plan. Hungry, thirsty, sick, strange, naked, people in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's so I teach a class at Pepperdine and actually at a school on the East Coast as well. But I also teach a class at San Quentin. Been teaching there for 10
Mm-hmm.
years. And the
Mm-hmm.
guys get time off their sentence by coming to the class.
Mm-hmm.
And I have those guys haven't learned a thing from me in 10 years, but I
Mm-hmm.
learned so much. To your point, my just head's on a swivel to say,
Mm-hmm.
how do you put together life and the strain it puts on relationships, and then punishment. I hosted a camp at this place we've got, and we brought 30 of the guys that have been in my class over the years that have paroled out, and also brought the warden to be
Mm-hmm.
with us. And it was such a rich time. It was just like, I want to go, like, I want to be right in the middle, front row center, like learning from these guys. Like, come on, teach me like
Mm-hmm.
what has worked, what hasn't worked, and not to make people projects, but to recognize people are people. And I think you're really good at that. I think you don't make people feel like they're projects. They're just, we honor people by seeing their humanity and their flaws, and we start seeing our flaws. And the more
Mm-hmm.
that we do that, we can have honest conversations. And then if faith guides your steps, people are going to see Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't guide their stuff, they're going to feel super welcome.
What does
Uh,
that mean? What does that mean that people will see Jesus if you let faith guide your steps?
yeah, yeah. So I just say, like, it's right out of Matthew 25. It says, if you want to meet me, you need to meet. I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was sick, I was strange, I was naked, I was in jail. And so that he's talking about sheep and goats, but he means like, if you want to meet me, you got to meet them. And so if we lead these cloistered lives where you go like, yikes, I want to get a little bit more on the edge of yikes. I want us to
Mm-hmm.
live a little bit riskier lives relationally, and we each approach that stuff differently. But I would say if somebody's listening to your series of podcasts, I hope you'll just do something that feels a little risky for you today. To reach
Mm-hmm.
out, send the text message to somebody who's a real pill to you, and just say sorry. Don't say sorry, you're wrong. Just say like sorry, and that's good. And you'll get back a text. It'll just have a bunch of question marks. And it'd be like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to worry about it. There's just something beautiful that we don't need to have a doctrinal statement about everything or a position paper on loving each other, just being available, each in our own way. I put my cell phone number in the back of 3 million books. I get about
Mm-hmm.
100 calls a day. And
Mm-hmm.
it's awesome. I just,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have a long time for everybody, but most people just want to know if it's true. And then they meet you and then they go like, "Oh my gosh, he's for real. He's like the
Mm-hmm.
real deal. He's not trying to
Mm-hmm.
pretend he's somebody else." And I think that kind of authenticity, if we could know why we're doing what we're doing, kind of full circle to where we started, I think some really beautiful things will come.
I agree with you. As I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, man, that sounds so tough and so overwhelming. But from knowing you and talking to you now and reading your book, it's like you've always kind of known that things aren't procedural. Like you don't have like this rigid system. It's like you're just living your life and you're open, and openness can be overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like 100 calls a day. I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with that because I feel responsible for getting back to those people. And I will feel sad that I didn't get back to like 70 of them that day. Like,
Oh,
how
I
do you
got
deal
no
with something
answer.
that
I
way?
got no answering machine because that would feel like homework to me. But if
Mm,
somebody calls, I'm surprised somebody hasn't called in the middle of this. If somebody calls, then I'll just say hello, and uh, and then usually you can tell pretty quickly whether people have something that they wanted to talk about or if they just want to see if it's true. And if
mm-hmm,
you can honor people, sometimes people say, "Hey, to make a long story short," and then they say, like, "When I was an embryo," I go like, "Oh, this is going to take a while." So then I give them my email address. I'm just, hey, collect your thoughts and shoot me an email. I'd be just honored. There's something, and that's not for everybody, but I just remember a guy way back in the day, Keith Green, wrote me 3 sentences back in response to my 3 sentences letter to him. And I don't even know what the 3 sentences were, but I just felt like such a boss that I just got a letter back from Keith freaking Green. And I just, so everybody that writes to me, they always get 3 sentences back, and they're not the
mm-hmm,
same 3 sentences. I just, so if you and I think that's probably this shared value, just honor people. And you don't
mm-hmm,
need to spend a ton of time into the smallest thing. Give your
mm-hmm,
mail carrier a bottle of water. Go hug the garbage man. Go like a non-creepy hug. Like, but Like there's just something really beautiful about getting in touch with our humanity. And then when you turn on, the news and it says something else, you just go like, you know what? I've just have a different lived experience right now. I'm not denying those things are true, but I'm saying there's also some other things that are true.
Okay. I can't wrap my head around this, and there's only one answer that I think is the answer. Because I'm thinking about you doing this. I'm like, the only person who I know who did this, to my knowledge, is Jesus. He's the only person who could do something like that. So do you feel like the reason why you're able to leave yourself to be open or hug the trash man and all and to give the male person a bottle of water, is it because your love for Jesus and what he's done for you?
Totally.
Is that the
No,
sole reason?
that's a return address for me. And that said, because we're reflections of or reactions to, I met some people that were really pretty thrilled about their faith adventure and all that. And they came to me. It was just like 50 pounds or whatever. When I had a 2 ounce bag, and they back dumped 50 pounds of thought
Mm-hmm.
process on me. So I just want to I mean, here's Jesus, the smartest theologian ever to walk the earth. And he points to two sheep and he says, it's like when one of those gets away. And everybody knows. I know exactly what that feels like. So he
Mm-hmm.
didn't talk about four words for love in Greek, agape, phileo. He just said, don't watch the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Like be with people that are on the fringe. There was no cool kids table, and if there
Mm-hmm.
was, he wouldn't be at it. He'd be with like the kids, this childlike faith, and so it
Mm-hmm.
isn't a lesser version. Somebody asked me, you get the darndest calls. Somebody said, "Are you watering down your faith again?" in this textbook, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Yes." This is for people who are thirsty for something in their life. I'll put a salt lick at the end of every pew if it'll make people thirsty for engaging their marriage, engaging their kids, engaging their faith, engaging that, feeling safe. I got people reading some of these books right now in some pretty unlikely places.
Mm-hmm.
Books called Everybody Always
Mm-hmm.
in a context where those are not the two words that come to mind. And yet they feel safe and they feel so they can do that. So, hey, Mazel Tov. I'm not going to go visit you there, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that if that gets you in the direction that you need to go, your next courageous step, then let's do that. Rather than telling people how far they have to go, let's talk about it. We're not blowing sunshine at them, but say, look how far you've come. So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody you pick the issue of the day, rather than getting up in somebody's grill to say, well, that's not far enough. Like I want to say, you know, for me or you, that wouldn't be much of a leap. But for them, it felt like they just jumped over a chasm to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, like, wow, like, what's your next move? Like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
next lily pad you're aiming for? And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like, and it isn't just going soft on bad ideas. It's just be so invitational, so safe that people could find their way to you and actually hear what you have to say about stuff, to actually be influenced by you.
Mm-hmm. So when you hear someone say, "Are you watering down your faith?" You don't take that as a um like an insult. It's like, yeah, that is what I'm doing because
Yes,
this needs to be accessible for all, right?
totally. It was meant, I'm guessing, as a dig.
Mm-hmm.
But most people, are really in their mind. If you could read their thought bubble, if they say, "Hey, you really put on some weight," then they're thinking in their thought bubble, "I'm being really helpful right now." And you go,
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, actually, that's so hurtful." But to say, if you can picture in your mind this thought bubble that says, "I'm being really helpful right now," even people that are flat wrong by any standard, to say, okay, so how can we move that in a direction that actually would be helpful? And you just kind
Mm-hmm.
of, in the law business, so you take your plaintiff where you find him. And so you take somebody, and it's the confluence of so many streams, many of which have a lot of gray water in them that got them to where they are. But you take them where you find them. And we can't keep telling people, come as you are to faith gatherings. but then give them the stink eye when they walk in
Mm,
all messed up.
mm,
So then again, that isn't going light on doctrine. It's just going big on Jesus. And
mm,
so whether whoever it is that they're married to or whoever they are sharing life with and how they're doing it and all that, again, that isn't going. I'm crystal clear on stuff that I think are crystal clear. And yet, I want to just say, like, how do we get to the next lily pad together? You are not a project,
mm,
you are a person, you are my newest friend or acquaintance. How can we get there? Is there any way I can help you on your journey? Uh,
mm,
and sometimes people that are have a really robust faith feel like they need to help baby Jesus by
mm,
doing the next thing. And man, read Revelations. He's out of the crib.
mm,
Matthew 16, after the big, who do you say I am moment, uh, Simon Peter says, I think you're God. And Jesus' response, don't tell anybody. There's my life verse. But the
mm.
next verse explains it. Flesh and blood doesn't reveal it to you, the Spirit of God does. So people will encounter you as I have, and you just go, there's a godly man that loves his wife, loves his kid, probably insecure in some similar ways to my insecurities, in some different ways. And I think that's what people are looking for. And then I just so trust the Spirit of God to move
Mm.
in people's lives. The gal for her wedding, the farmer, the person that is militant about, you pick it. But I don't want to just talk about Gaza. I want to start a school from kids from Gaza that are in Jordan getting medical treatment because there's
Mm,
200 of them. And I'd
mhm,
rather do that. And yet, that said, that sounds like an across the ocean thing. So I want to say,
mhm,
what am I doing across the street right now? Uh,
mhm,
and
mhm.
not to beat myself up, but if we can have a plan that we're working to say whatever is within my capability range, I want to do those things. Just be nice
Yeah,
to
no,
your.
100%. Yeah, and it's so inspiring to hear you talk about that because I believe everything that you're saying because how the conversation first started with like having a not a goal, but you're here for something, and the only way that you know that is to like go out and do it and experiment and get empathy and understand people and understand that you can do things and don't if you ha- if you try for something and there's no, it doesn't mean it's over. It means just you just keep going because you're not trying to be graded on that one yes from this person or this thing or whatever the case may be. The thing that's coming up for me now, it's like I'm hearing you speak and I'm thinking about empathy, right? And I'm like, Bob is like this because of his relationship with Jesus and how much he loves Jesus and what he did for him. And empathy came up. I'm like, man, was there any point in your life that you had to deconstruct your faith to get closer to it? And is that the reason why you are closer to Jesus now than you were at some other point in your life? So did you ever have to deconstruct your faith to have the strong faith now, or did you lean in more and that is what made your faith as strong as it is now?
I think I like that somebody's telling me they became a Christian as if there was like a moment in time, and I totally understand that concept. But I would say I'm becoming like I'm still like I'm every single day. I'm trying to lean into this thing. If you take agreeing with Jesus off the table, because he never asks anybody to agree with him, and there's only do it or don't do it. It could be something outward or something inward, but you either doing it or not doing it. And I'm just trying to continually take agree off the table. So at a really practical level, to just be less easily offended. Um, there was I'm not quite sure why I was there, but I get invited to some funny things. And there was like 600 dudes with like 10-gallon hats on, and they're all bunch of it's a room full of cowboys, and they're great guys. But then they hear I'm from California, and you know how people do a little dig. They'll because
Mm-hmm.
California has kind of a reputation for being kind of liberal.
Yeah.
You're like, a couple fries short of a Happy Meal or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy walked up to me and he said, I don't think your lid's on right. And I was like, what? What did I say to like be so off-putting? And I realized I was holding my coffee and my lid wasn't on right. He was just trying to be helpful. And so I was so glad that I wasn't so quick to take offense, that there was like another beat that got in there. And so when you ask about like what has helped shape this theology around love, because I've met some people that have they have great doctrine and they have lousy theology. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to just build this theology around love. And my worldview is that begins, ends, and the middle part is all about Jesus. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for the guy at the tire store, I just want to say, hey man, what? Thank you so much for those radials. Or what do you
Mm-hmm.
do when one blows out? Or even better, could I mount that radio? Would that like void all your insurance if I were to do that? Because having a shared experience that comes from Acts 2 and 4, it said they broke bread together, they pounded carbs, and then they had things in common. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
so big on shared experiences. Like, what if we go and do this together? What if we do that together? That moment. And I'm usually learning that. Again, I'm back to the people that are my teachers, and a whole bunch of them are at San Quentin. There's a guy in my class that was a member of the Manson family. He was actually Charlie Manson's right hand guy. And he's been in my class for years. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. And it was a Christmas time, and I thought, I'm going to go dressed like Santa. And then I got to the front gate and they're not big. Because you'll have like a hacksaw or crack or something in there. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did this Jedi thing, like, you want to let me in. And so they let me in. And now I'm in the yard at St. Quentin, and this guy comes and he sits on my lap and he says, I've never sat on Santa's lap before. And I was like, oh, and then I thought, I've never had a serial killer sitting in my lap before. So this is new for both of us. And I said, what do you want? Like, that's how it rolls when you get on Santa's lap. So what do you want? And he said, I'd like a call on Christmas morning. Isn't that beautiful? I thought he'd
That is
want an
beautiful.
alibi or something else, and the warden is a good guy, and he set up a video camera. And on Christmas morning, we had just the best conversation. And like you and I are talking, then he said, hey, hang on a second. He stepped out of the screen, and the next guy sat down. And then we had this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful conversation. He said, hang on. And the next guy, and they panned the camera over. There's 30 guys in line. I
Mm-hmm.
think as you and I launch into today, if somebody's listening, they just say, like, what's the person next to me? What's the next thing I can do? This whole idea to love God and then love the person next to you. Whether they're doing time outside a penitentiary because they're in a difficult marriage, a difficult job, a challenging circumstance, or they're doing time inside. But to just recognize that people are going through these hard things, and you and I can kind of keep it together. And we're not being less than authentic, but we're just trying to find a way to kind of keep it together in the midst of all of our uncertainty and unresolved stuff from before, and relationships that got weird and all that. But that we're keeping our eyes at Faith Guide Your Steps fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. But while we're fixed on Jesus, we're actually available to the guy at the tire store and just say,
Mm-hmm.
like, how can I be helpful?
Mm-hmm. I just don't understand how we can practically do that without dealing with ourselves and getting out of our own way. I'm really struggling with that.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think you're right. I think you're onto something. What if we do this? Why don't you, we can do it offline, but let's just go to San Quentin together or go do whatever, come to uh,
Oh,
anywhere.
I would love to
Oh,
go
yeah.
to
So
San
we'll just
Quentin.
swap an email and then just come. And I love that, like, come and see thing. And I'm telling you, you're going to walk in and be so encouraging to those men, and then they will in turn be so encouraging to you. And there's an app they have now where I get, I don't know, 10 emails a day from guys
Mm-hmm.
that if they're in lockdown or something, they'll just drop me a note and see how I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like it's just so wonderfully disruptive. And then this highfalutin whatever it is that you've got over there, you can have empathy for the person that is dealing with that set of issues that's so
Mm-hmm.
different than the person that's in lockdown for week two in a cell that's 6 feet 5 inches wide and 10 feet 2 inches long. And they got a roommate that weighs 240 like they do, everything they own, a toilet, a sink, And to just to have that, it's the size of, I got a carpet in this little room here that's the size of two guys' cells, and that cell's
Mm,
170 years old. And it just
mm.
makes me think when I think of there's something challenging, and indeed it is, but it gives me context for that. Like uh, being misunderstood, man, that's just Tuesday for me. How about you?
Yeah, it's Monday through Friday.
Yeah, I just get misunderstood all the time. So I'm like, pull a
Mm-hmm.
ticket. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
being flip, well, maybe a little bit, but I'm just not gonna, I've got my eyes so focused on why I'm doing what I'm doing that I'm not gonna get distracted. If somebody says something mean behind your back, you can just quietly keep it in your thought bubble, but say there's a reason I'm in front of them.
So why are you doing what you're doing?
I think I want to leave this legacy of love. I want to show that it'd be possible to pull something off, both in small and large ways that would move the needle in people's life. An act of kindness to the mail carrier, and then we're building some stuff over in Uganda right now. That
Mm-hmm.
will be. It'll take me for the next 5 or 10 years to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many days I have left in me, but that seems like a good bet. We want to take kids from diapers to doctorate. And so
Mm-hmm.
we got to have a university to do that. And so we picked the epicenter of the war with the Lord's Resistance Army in northern Uganda, and that's where we're building it. But I already got 2,000 kids living on campus at the school next door. So we're just going like, what can we do? So I'll go over in a week or two and we'll graduate them. And we just sent over, Amazon just sold a lot of caps and gowns, and we just bring them over there. And what a
It's
neat
beautiful.
moment to see these kids
Mm-hmm.
do that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I immediately think, what can I do for kids right here? Just over the border in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people waiting to come in legally, but 4,000 of them. But they didn't have a school. And then you just get a bunch of people that are, sometimes you and I might be able to galvanize a couple people to say, let's do this thing. I'm in. How about
Mm-hmm.
you? And it's not a fun,
Mm-hmm.
it's independent. We don't do fundraisers. We don't do any of that stuff. We just like, if we want funding, I'll write a book.
Mm.
And it's better than making, if I made cupcakes, people would die. But I love it. Whatever. Sue me.
I know we're coming up on time. I have one last question to ask you. You know, when I started the show because I know that we're all more than what made us. Like I know that you are what you are because you knew that you were more than what made you. I'm the same way. What would you say to someone who is going through circumstances and feeling like they are who they are and they can't change who they are because of the circumstances that they come from, the parents that they were given, the neighborhood that they were raised in, the condition that they have? What's one way they can become like more loving today, like right where they are, and how they can go into this journey of love and
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think love is the word I want to use. Love.
Yeah. So there's like a small, medium, and large answer. The smallest answer is that get an hourglass and just flip that thing over and then just say the the sand that's already through the tight part in the middle, that was your pain, that was whatever, but that's on the bottom of the glass now. And then let's
Mm-hmm.
deal with what's on the top of the glass, not being ignorant of the fact that stuff has happened. And if there's some unresolved stuff, let's go deal with that. That's Freud. He's like, let's go talk all about your childhood and all that. And there's some real benefit. There's another guy called Adler that said, let's talk about what's on the top of the glass. So the easiest version, just get that hourglass out. You don't need a big heady answer. Just say, what am I going to do with what I have left? Recognizing it was influenced by circumstances, both good and bad, that you were exposed to, parents that were either good at loving you or bad, ex-boyfriends or girlfriends that were good at loving you or bad, missed 100 great decisions you made and 30 or 40 lousy ones. But to say like, what is the stuff that happened? But to say, what's my next move? And I want to just live in that top half, not ignorant of the bottom half, but not fixated. That's Freud. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why people get in psychotherapy and they just are all, because we're always talking about what's in the bottom of the glass. And I want to say there's can be some value. Like, let's take a hard look at that. Now, let's get back. How can I move the needle? What's my next courageous step? How can I do a quick little audit of my friends? the people that have the largest voices in my life, and I want to move air gap a little bit, people who are not safe. It's usually not physically safe, but just emotionally. They're people
Mm,
that have things in their thought bubble, that they're saying things, and then it just doesn't connect with your view of the world. You might watch the input that you're getting. Like, what are you exposed to? What kind of negativity? And there's a guy named, it's more like top half the guy, Diogenes, was the founder of cynicism. And yet he lived in a water barrel. Is that crazy?
mm,
That was a big
mm-hmm.
water barrel. And he would walk through Athens every day at noon with a lamp that was lit. And people are like, Diogenes, what? It's noon. And he said, I'm looking for virtue. And so
Mm,
that's what I would do. I would say to people, can we find virtue even in circumstances that are not very virtuous? Not to put a patina of yippee skippy and confetti and all that on it, but to say, is there anything virtuous in the people I disagree with the most? And sometimes I got to admit, I don't see anything virtuous, but I'm going to continue to look. I'm going to
mm,
continue to, I'm going full Diogenes. I'm not going to roll my eyes and say, Southwest Airlines or whatever the economy or whatever political hat you're wearing. But to say, is there any virtue there, and what can I do to move the needle in hungry, thirsty, sick, strange, naked? Not the most influential person that seems to be at the table, the person sitting taking that fancy chair at the head, but to say, what person doesn't think they're invited? That I could say, come on, let's scoot over, let's just share a chair.
mm,
And you'll draw a couple eyes. They'll say, well, we just don't do that. And just think, what's the most generous explanation to say this is probably really disruptive for them of their
mm,
worldview and their idea of what's orderly? What's the most reasonable to say, no, they had something different planned than this. So how could I accommodate that? And then at the same time, do that. And it's usually for me, kind of full circle, it's shared experiences. When you and I go and
mm,
hang out for the day at San Quentin, we'll have just one more shared experiences. We'll have one more connection point in this friendship, and I
mm,
think we could do that, and then not just be friends with the people who are easy. If you want to
mm,
expand your faith, find the person that you disagree with the most and see how you're engaging them. I'm not saying blow sunshine at them or validate all the wrong that they're doing, but to say, would it be okay with me if the person having that book study in their part of the world wearing their color hat, would that be okay with me? And if,
mm,
that's okay with me. I hope that's moved the needle for them. And what I'm going to do is lead this kind of palms up life instead of clenched fist. I'm like
mm.
ready to receive new friends rather than fight new battles.
I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Like, it's so inspiring, and it's like, it's so funny because I'm a very like analytical procedure kind of guy, and like as I'm listening to you, I'm like, yeah, there is no procedure, there is no routine, there is no structure. It's just love and
Yeah, you and I are
love.
off-roading, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like it's just love, and it's a really complicated. I want to say it's really complicated, but I also want to say it's not really complicated. I think that it takes a lot of work, but it doesn't take a lot of work. And I think when it all boils down to it, that's where like the faith actually comes in, and not trying to control the outcome, but to lead with love and to be able to separate your emotions versus like what your heart and your spirit is telling you to do. And I think you give all of us such hope in such practical ways to do it. And I thank you so much for your work, from your books, from the things you do in your everyday life, because I think you're doing exactly what you want to do, which is to leave that legacy that I think will impact generations and generations. So thank you so much for all that you do and continue to do, and I just continue to wish you luck with. I don't even think you need luck. I think you put in the work and you lead with love, and the things happen. So thank you for all that you do, Bob. I genuinely mean it.
And I know it's a lot of work. These podcasts, it isn't like you have all this time,
Hmm.
but you set out, you said, I actually have something to say.
Hmm.
And like Paul Revere, you just said, I got a message and I want to get it to the right people. So the encouragement just to continue to do that thing. You've got this heartbeat and just continue to do that, you're a really safe place for people. That's why they're listening to you. Just continue to do that. And then circumstances will draw you away. People will get up in your grill about something, you'll be misunderstood, but just say, eyes fixed. I'm just like,
Mm.
I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm deeply flawed. If you're half as deeply flawed as me, that'll keep you humble. And yet to say, no, I've got a message. I got to get it to the right people. So keep it up, and then we'll connect offline and get into some mischief together.